Scarlet and Violet added over 100 new Pokemon, and I'm here to tell you which of them stand clearly above the rest. Competitively speaking, of course. I am a Pokemon World Champion after all. It's totally fine if your favorite Pokemon is Lechonk, but if you're looking to dominate the battlefield, you might want to look elsewhere. I'm not including the legendary Pokemon on this list for obvious reasons, and I'm also not including the Paradox Pokemon because I want to talk about them separately. Everything else that's new is fair game, so let's start with number 10. Our worst of the best slot goes to Cetitan. It's really rare for ice types to be among the best of a new generation, but here we are. Cetitan has a lot going for it. It has two really good abilities in Slush Rush and Thick Fat. Slush Rush allows it to work on snow, formerly hail-centric teams. And Thick Fat is just a really good ability in general. Cetitan's main selling point, in my opinion, are its phenomenal base stats. 170 HP is ridiculous, and more than makes up for its below average defenses. Cetitan has a very respectable attack stat, and though its speed is middling, it's still fast enough that it can take advantage of Slush Rush to outspeed most other Pokemon. You just need to make sure that snow is up in order for this thing to work. Hail, snow, it's a whole thing. I'm going to talk about it in a different video. Cetitan's move pool is bonkers. It gets all the strong ice type attacks like Icicle Crash, Ice Spinner, and Ice Shard, but it also gets good coverage moves like Superpower, Earthquake, Stomping Tantrum, Liquidation, and even Play Rough. And as if all this weren't enough, it also gets some pretty decent support moves. Yawn, Helping Hand, and Icy Wind. Cetitan is a really versatile Pokemon that benefits more from terastallization than your average Pokemon. Even if you don't terastallize it, it's still a good Pokemon, but its typing is by far its weakest aspect. Being able to swap it out for something with, actual resistances is, as the youth say, poggers. I don't think Cetitan is going to be on every team by any means, but I do think it is one of the best new Pokemon added this generation. Number 9 goes to Arboliva, a grass and normal type Pokemon that frankly has a whole lot going for it. First, its ability, Seed Sower. This ability sets up grassy terrain whenever the Pokemon is hit by an attack. This is a really cool variant of the Grassy Surge ability, which sets grassy terrain up when the Pokemon switches in. I think it's really cool because although you lose the ability to instantaneously change the terrain upon switch in, you can theoretically set it up multiple times without needing to switch out. Besides a horrible speed stat, Arboliva has great bulk and a very good special attack stat that can be augmented further thanks to grassy terrain. Its move pool isn't quite as deep as Cetitan's, but it still has a lot to work with. Offensively, it has Giga Drain and Leaf Storm, which is to be expected, but also Dazzling Gleam, Weather Ball, and very importantly, Earth Power, which hits the fire, steel, and poison types that resist grass. It can also support its teammates with Helping Hand and Pollen Puff, or try to outlast opponents with Leech Seed and Strength Sap. Its typing isn't the best, so like Cetitan, it can make good use of terastallization. It can use Terra Ground offensively to do more damage, or Terra Fire defensively to turn many of its weaknesses into resistances. The last thing I want to mention is that Arboliva actually has one other build that I think has a lot of potential. This one utilizes its other ability, Harvest. Harvest became one of my favorite abilities after I used it to get second at the World Championships with Exeggutor, and I think it's criminally underrated. Harvest allows a Pokemon to have effectively infinite recovery, and on a bulky Pokemon like Arboliva, I think we could definitely see it shine. It probably won't be the primary set, but it is one that I have my eye on. Number 8 goes to a Pokemon with the best type combination in the game, Tinkaton. This Fairy and Steel type Pokemon really freaked me out when I saw that its signature move, Gigaton Hammer, was stronger than Hyper Beam with a smaller drawback. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Like I said, Fairy and Steel is the best type combination in the game. It only has 2 weaknesses, and it hits an overwhelming amount of the field for neutral or super effective damage, while having a ton of resistances and 2 immunities. It's a pretty brutal combination, and it was one of the main reasons why Zacian dominated competitive Pokemon last year. Nevertheless, Tinkaton's stats keep it from being higher up on this list. While it does have totally solid defenses and a surprisingly high speed stat given how big that hammer is, its attack stat is shockingly low. This holds it back significantly. Thank goodness. I could not deal with Zacian 2. Now, as I mentioned earlier, Tinkaton has a signature move called Gigaton Hammer. It's extraordinarily strong, but it can't be used consecutively. It also has access to the best physical fairy type attack, Play Rough, and one of the single best moves ever made, Fake Out. Knockoff and Ice Hammer round out its good coverage moves. But that's pretty much all of its viable moves. Tinkaton is way less flexible than nearly every Pokemon on this list. It'll almost always run Gigaton Hammer, Play Rough, Fake Out, and a coverage move if it's holding the Assault Vest, or Protect otherwise. It mostly earns its spot on our top 10 list because of its amazing typing, good moves, and access to the ever-broken Fake Out. Number 7 was a really tough choice, but in the end, I decided to give it to the Scarlet exclusive Armarouge, the Fire and Psychic type counterpart to Ceruledge. It isn't the strongest new Pokemon, but it does have a lot going for it. Let's start with its typing. I would give this typing an above average rating. In exchange for 5 weaknesses, Armarouge gets 7 resistances. Unfortunately, all of the types that it's weak to are fairly common, but on the other hand, so are the types that it resists, so I guess it balances out. Oh, also, its main ability Flash Fire makes it immune to fire type attacks, which is pretty handy. Offensively, the typing is pretty decent too. It only hits 6 types for super effective damage, but there's no single type in the game that resists both fire and psychic. So how about its stats? Well, Armarouge is a very well balanced Pokemon. It has good stats across the board with an above average special attack. Its bulk is actually pretty good, but its speed stat is low, which makes it a bit difficult to use. Compared to Ceruledge, Armarouge is slightly slower, physically bulkier, and a special attacker. Ceruledge has the same stat values, but in different places. That's not to say Armarouge is bad by any means. One of its biggest strengths is its move pool. Armarouge gets a signature fire-type attack called Armor Cannon, which is a 120 base power move that lowers both of the user's defenses after it connects. This is a phenomenal move, but it isn't the only good move that Armarouge has access to. Standard fire-type moves like Flamethrower, Heat Wave, and Overheat are all present, as are Psychic, Psyshock, and Expanding Force. Armarouge learns a number of good coverage moves like Aura Sphere, Energy Ball, Dragon Pulse, and Shadow Ball, but in my opinion, what you should really be looking for to round out its move pool is its support moves. Wide Guard, Will-O-Wisp, Calm Mind, Helping Hand, and, very importantly, Trick Room. These are all incredible moves, and having access to Trick Room in particular makes me very confident that we're going to be seeing Armarouge in competitive play. Number 6 goes to Ceruledge. Probably not that surprising given how similar it is to Armarouge. I went back and forth on whether to rate Armarouge or Ceruledge higher, but honestly, it just came down to their stats. Ceruledge is a fire and ghost type, which is better both offensively and defensively than Armarouge's fire and psychic types. Whereas Armarouge's typing granted 7 resistances, Ceruledge's grants 7 resistances and 2 immunities. In terms of weaknesses, they both have the exact same ones. Offensively, Ceruledge is also able to hit 6 types for super effective damage, but Ghost is typically considered a better offensive type than Psychic because it's only countered by 2 types compared to Psychic's 3. In terms of the stats, Ceruledge has a slightly more usable speed stat and higher natural special bulk. Special bulk is normally considered more valuable compared to physical bulk in competitive Pokemon. This is because you can easily buff up your physical defense with Intimidate or Will-O-Wisp. Ceruledge also gets a signature attack, Bitter Blade. This is a fire-type attack with 90 base power. Although it is weaker than Armor Cannon, it heals Ceruledge for half of the damage dealt. This is a great move, especially if you've trained your Ceruledge to be bulky. While Ceruledge doesn't have as good a supporting move lineup compared to Armarouge, what it does have is a much better coverage move, Close Combat. Having such a good fighting move is a pretty big deal because the only 2 types that are able to resist Ghost, Normal and Dark, are hit for super effective damage by fighting. In short, I think Ceruledge has a lot going for it and is really only held back by its middling speed stat. Before we get into the top 5, I'd like to take a second and ask you to subscribe. I've been working really hard on these videos because I care a lot about making high quality information about Pokemon accessible to anyone. So if you find these videos useful, I hope you consider subscribing. I really want to be the first competitive Pokemon creator to reach 1 million subscribers, and given how many people watch my videos who aren't subscribed, I know that it's possible. Regardless of if you've subscribed or not, I want to say thank you for watching. I'm really lucky to be able to do what I do, and it's only possible because people like you watch my videos. Anyway, let's talk about the top 5. Number 5 goes to Bisharp's new evolution, King Gambit. Between you and me, I'm a little worried that I've underestimated this Pokemon. It might end up being even stronger than I think. Feel free to come back to this video and roast me if it ends up taking over the game in a couple months. I'm well aware that Bisharp is already a good Pokemon. It saw a ton of play in Generation 5, and it popped up every now and then in the years following. And King Gambit is just Bisharp with better stats. As a dark and steel type, Kingambit resists half of the types in the game, and is immune to 2 more of them on top of that. Its only weaknesses are fighting, ground, and fire. Offensively, it hits 5 types for super effective damage, and on top of that, there's no single type in the game that resists both steel and dark. Sprinkle on top that Kingambit is one of the only dark types that can handle fairies, and you've got yourself a Wolfglick approved Pokemon. The typing isn't the only thing working in Kingambit's favor. Its stats are honestly remarkable. They gave it not only tremendous bulk, but an attack stat so high it's only 10 points lower than Landorus Therian. They clearly had to balance this thing, so I'm sure that's how it ended up with its astonishingly low speed stat. Even slower than Bisharp. It's even slower than Armarouge and Ceruledge. But Kingambit has something that they don't. Sucker Punch. Basically, to explain it quickly, the speed stat is important because being faster than your opponent means hitting first, and in competitive Pokemon, hitting first usually means winning. Some Pokemon have moves that go first regardless of their speed stats, and Sucker Punch is one of the better ones. So even though Kingambit is slow, using this attack allows it to go first. Sucker Punch isn't the only strong attack Kingambit gets. It also has Iron Head, a reliable physical steel type attack, and Kowtow Cleave. What, you think I just made that name up? Nope. Somebody at Game Freak made it up. Kowtow Cleave is Kingambit's signature attack. Kowtow Cleave is an 85 base power attack that never misses. While this isn't that great of a secondary effect, this is still a major upgrade over anything Bisharp gets. Bisharp's best dark type attack is Night Slash, which is a measly 70 base power. This move is over 20% stronger. It's just a free upgrade on an already powerful Pokemon. And that's not all. Kingambit has not 1, but 2 good abilities. Its signature ability, Supreme Overlord, gives it a power boost per fainted ally. Hey, this is Wolf from the future. I have a couple addendums just to add on to this video, so I'm going to jump in here and there. Just letting you know that the power boost per fainted ally is 10%. So it's still a good ability, but you're only in a competitive Pokemon match going to get it up to 30%, so not that high. Imagine an endgame scenario where Kingambit is your last Pokemon standing and can use Sucker Punch to pick off all of your opponent's weakened Pokemon. But believe it or not, Supreme Overlord is not Kingambit's best ability. That title goes to Defiant, one of the best abilities in the game. Defiant gives a Pokemon a +2 boost to its attack when an opponent lowers any of its stats. The best part is Intimidate, which is kind of the catch-all check to physical attackers in general, instead ends up powering them up if they have Defiant. This ability is kind of the main reason that Bisharp was even used in competitive Pokemon for such a long time. You know, after talking about all this, I kind of feel like Kingambit should be higher on my list. Let's talk about number 4. This slot goes to one of the hardest Pokemon to get, Gholdengo. Don't know if I'm saying that right. If you're molding in the comments about my pronunciation, this one's not on purpose. I have no idea. Anyway, let's start by talking about its typing. Ghost and Steel is another one of the best type combinations in the game. It's so good, in fact, that I personally believe that the last Steel and Ghost type Pokemon we got, Aegislash, was the reason that Steel was nerfed so heavily going into Generation 6. Gholdengo is weak to Fire, Ground, Ghost, and Dark, while having 9 resistances and 3 immunities, which is the maximum possible number of immunities, at least from typing. Offensively, this type combination isn't bad. Ghost excels at hitting Pokemon for neutral damage, and Steel being able to hit fairies for super effective is always good as well. Gholdengo's stats are above average across the board, until you hit its special attack stat, which is just nuts. Gholdengo isn't especially fast by any means, but it isn't slow either. It sits comfortably in the middle speed tier, which is more than enough for it given how many other strengths it has. Like the last 4 Pokemon, Gholdengo also has a signature attack, Make It Rain, which, yeah, I'm not trolling you, that's literally what it's called. This is essentially a Steel type overheat, having a high base power but lowering the user's special attack by 2 stages if it connects. That's wrong. That's straight up wrong. I did not understand how this move worked, so I was wrong on 2 counts. This move is broken, and I'm letting you know right now that I underestimated Gholdengo because I didn't understand how good this move is. It is 120 base power, that is correct. However, instead of lowering the user's special attack by 2 stages, it's only 1 stage, which is a pretty big deal on its own. The other thing that I did not realize is that this is not a single target move. This move hits both of your opponents. This is a spread damage, 120 base power move that only lowers your special attack by 1 stage. This move is unbelievably broken, and how good it is literally bumps Gholdengo up by at least 1 place and maybe 2. Gholdengo doesn't have a super deep move pool. but it has everything it needs. Shadow Ball and Flash Cannon are reliable attacks, and Recover and Nasty Plot are great options for augmenting what Gholdengo can do. Gholdengo also, yes also, has a signature ability, Good as Gold. This ability is straight up broken. It makes Gholdengo immune to all status moves. Not just status conditions, status moves. Want to stop Gholdengo from clicking Recover with Taunt? Too bad, that's a status move. Want to Encore it and force it to use Nasty Plot again? Status move. Status moves are incredibly popular in competitive Pokemon. So creating a Pokemon that's straight up immune to them is a major "what were they thinking" moment from me. Number 3 is this generation's pseudo-legendary Dragon-type Pokemon, Baxcalibur. Let's start with its typing, Dragon and Ice. In some ways, this is its weakest feature. It has 5 weaknesses in exchange for only 3 resistances. Offensively, it only hits 4 types for super effective damage, and neither type can hit Steel. I know this sounds like a pretty rough start for a Pokemon I rank so highly, but bear with me. This thing's stats are wild. Seriously. It's as strong as Landorus T and significantly bulkier than Gastrodon and Amoonguss. And it's faster than Rotom. I cannot express enough how good these stats are. And to be honest, stats are the single most important factor in determining whether or not a Pokemon is actually good. Baxcalibur also gets a signature move, Gliave Rush. This is a 120 base power dragon type move that causes the user to take double damage from opponents the next turn. But you can get around this drawback by just using Protect. Offensively, it gets Dragon Claw, Icicle Crash, and Ice Shard for priority. And you know how good priority is. Its coverage moves include Earthquake, Stomping Tantrum, Crunch, and Iron Head. What really interests me though are its supporting moves, specifically Dragon Dance and Swords Dance. These moves allow Baxcalibur to become an immensely threatening sweeper, especially when combined with a good defensive terrestrialization like Steel or Fairy. I don't think Baxcalibur needs to terrestrialize to be good, but I do think that it makes excellent use of it. Our runner-up goes to Annihilape. I never thought I'd see the day where a Mankey evolution would be good, but here we are. All it took was for it to literally die. Annihilape is a fighting and ghost type, which is a very threatening offensive pairing for reasons we discussed earlier when talking about Ceruledge. Fighting hits dark and normal for super effective damage, the only 2 types that can handle ghost. This combination isn't amazing defensively, but it isn't horrible either. You're weak to 4 types, and though you only get 3 resistances, the immunities to normal and fighting are always nice to have. Annihilape has way better stats than Primeape. It gains a little attack, but a ton of bulk. Primeape gets blown over by a light breeze, but if you want to get Annihilape off the field, you're going to have to hit it pretty hard. Having good natural bulk on a Pokemon geared towards offense is great, because it lets you stick around for longer to do more damage, even if you don't explicitly invest in training your defensive stats. Annihilape also has a great move pool. Its signature attack, Rage Fist, starts out with a pretty low base power of 50. But the more times Annihilape is hit, the stronger the move gets. I didn't specify this, but I thought it was important, so I'm adding it now. Every time Annihilape is hit, Rage Fist gets 50 base power stronger, which means after 2 hits, you're at 150 base power with no drawback. This is truly absurd. Annihilape's other viable attacks include Close Combat, Shadow Claw, and Phantom Force, as well as good coverage moves like Fire Punch, Ice Punch, Earthquake, Stone Edge, Gunk Shot, Seed Bomb, U-Turn. Does this thing learn a move of every type? I also want to call out 2 specific support moves, Encore and Final Gambit. Final Gambit catches my interest because of how high Annihilape's base HP is. Plus, Scarlet and Violet introduced some Pokemon that get stronger the more their allies faint. Oh yeah, and just like King Gambit, Annihilape also gets Defiant. So if you were planning on using Intimidate to slow it down, don't even bother. Before I reveal the number 1 slot, I want to do a quick honorable mention to Tatsugiri and Dondozo. These are 2 Pokemon that, while unremarkable on their own, become very powerful when they're paired together. I have no idea how good they actually are because I haven't had time to test them extensively yet, but they definitely have potential. I didn't feel comfortable putting them on this list because they're so weird and they kind of only work together, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if they ended up being great. Hey, Future Wolf again, just letting you know there's another Pokemon I think I neglected to mention that I should talk about here, and that is Mousehold. This Pokemon is really good. I didn't notice it initially when I made this list because its stats aren't really that great, and also because I didn't understand how its signature move worked, but now with future knowledge, I will say that this Pokemon should have been on this list somewhere. Long story short, there's two things that it does really well. The first is that it has a signature attack, Population Bomb, which hits 1 to 10 times, and I thought this was just a random number. No, it's actually it hits until it misses, so really strong. Can have up to 200 base power, coupled with Technician, coupled with Stab. It's a really strong move if it hits all the time. The other thing is it gets access to Follow Me, which is one of the strongest attacks in the game and has very limited distribution, and it has the very powerful ability Friend Guard. Basically, Mousehold can be a strong supporting Pokemon or a sweeper, and it definitely should have made this list. Well, that's enough waiting. The number 1 slot goes to Palafin. This is one of the coolest concepts ever made in Pokemon, and I am so excited to use it. Basically, Palafin has 2 forms. Its everyday citizen form and its hero form. Because it wants to keep its secret identity, well, secret, it won't let anyone see it transform. So it'll only turn into its hero form when it's switched out and can do a costume change inside of its Pokeball. Both forms are pure water, which, while not an exciting combination, is still a very good individual type. While its citizen form stats are nothing impressive, its hero form stats are what earned it the number 1 slot on this list. Look at this stat spread. It's 10% stronger than Landorus T, as bulky as Corviknight, and as fast as Mega Kangaskhan? What? The stats alone are enough to earn it this spot on the list. But there's even more. Palafin is one of only 2 Pokemon in the game to get access to Flip Turn, a water type U-turn that allows it to switch out, which, as a reminder, is the condition necessary to allow it to transform. It also has the signature attack Jet Punch, a priority attack that is 50% stronger than the priority water type attack we already had. It also gets the super powerful attack Wave Crash, plus Ice Punch, Iron Head, and Close Combat. If this Pokemon didn't need to transform, it would absolutely be on every team. Even with this annoying condition, I still expect its usage stats to be really high. And that's the top 10. Was there anything on my list that you felt didn't deserve a place here? Was there anything you think I maybe left off? Disagree with any of the placements? I try to read every comment, so if you have any opinions, let me know down below.